Hey guys, tonight we explore the brutal and surprisingly complex world of the Roman gladiator. Forget the simple myths of heroic slaves fighting for freedom. We are going to journey down the dark and varied paths that led a man to the blood-soaked sands of the arena, to a life of violent spectacle in the shadow of the Colosseum. The very life of a man was at stake, but also his chance for fame, fortune, and a strange kind of freedom found only in the shadow of certain death. For some, this path was a sentence of death. For others, it was the only viable path to life. But our story does not begin in the Colosseum. It does not begin with the roar of the crowd or the blinding flash of sunlight on a polished helmet. It begins much earlier, in darkness and despair, with the loss of everything. You are not, as you might imagine, a volunteer, eager for glory. That is a rare and strange path we will touch upon. No, your journey to the arena, the journey we will take tonight, begins with the complete and total forfeiture of your life. You are a commodity, a piece of property, a body destined for the sand, acquired by your new master through one of several cruel and unforgiving paths. Let us first imagine you as a prisoner of war. You are a Goth, a Dacian, a Briton, a Gaul. You were born free in a land of deep forests and cold, clear rivers. You fought bravely, perhaps with a painted shield and a long iron sword, to defend your homeland from the relentless, disciplined advance of the Roman legions. You saw your friends and kinsmen fall. You felt the terror and the fury of battle. But in the end, the eagle standards of Rome triumphed. Your shield was splintered, your sword broken. You were captured. Defeat is not an honorable end. It is the beginning of a new kind of suffering. You are chained at the neck to hundreds of other captives, a long, shuffling coffle of human misery. You are marched for weeks, for months, across a continent. The sun is hotter here. The language of your captors a harsh, barking sound you do not understand. You are given just enough coarse bread and foul water to keep you alive. The weak who fall by the wayside are left to die, their bodies a feast for crows. Finally, you arrive in Rome. The city is a bewildering, terrifying assault on your senses. 1 million people, a chaos of noise and smells you have never experienced. You are herded into a vast open-air slave market. You are stripped naked, your body oiled to make it glisten in the sun. A small wooden plaque, a titulus, is hung around your neck, listing your age, your place of origin, and any special skills you might possess. You are forced onto a rotating platform while the auctioneer, the mango, extols your virtues to the crowd. Men prod your muscles, inspect your teeth as if you were a horse. They are assessing you not as a human being, but as an investment. Your strength, your warrior's physique, the defiant look in your eye, catches the attention of a particular kind of buyer. A man with cold eyes and a heavy purse. He is a lanista, a dealer in human flesh, destined for the arena. The gavel falls. You have been sold. Or perhaps your path is different. You are already a slave, born into bondage within the sprawling Roman world. You are a field hand on a vast agricultural estate, a latifundium, in Sicily. Your life is one of back-breaking labor under a relentless sun, from dawn until dusk. You are strong, but you have a spirit that has not yet been broken. You defy an overseer one too many times. You refuse an order. You fight back. As punishment, or simply because you are now seen as problematic property, your master decides to sell you. Not to another farm, but to a ludus, a gladiator school. To him, it is a simple transaction, a way to turn a profit on a disobedient slave. To you, it is a death sentence, but one that will be drawn out, for the profit and entertainment of others. Or maybe your path is darker still. You are not a warrior, nor a slave. You are a criminal, a murderer, an arsonist, a highwayman, a traitor to the state. You have stood before a Roman magistrate and have been found guilty. But you are not sentenced to a simple, clean execution. You are sentenced damnatus ad luctum, condemned to the games. This is a specific and terrible fate. You are not to be simply killed. You are to be handed over to a lanista, to be trained, armed, and forced to provide a bloody spectacle for the masses until the day the sand finally drinks your own blood. Your death is no longer your own. It belongs to the Roman people as a public entertainment. You have lost all rights, all hope. You are a dead man walking, whose only remaining purpose is to die in an interesting way. And then there is the strangest, rarest path of all. You are a free Roman citizen. You have rights, a name, a family, but you are buried under a mountain of debt that you can never hope to repay. Or you are an army veteran, a former legionary who has seen too much blood, and now you have a taste for violence that quiet civilian life cannot satisfy. Or perhaps you simply possess a deep, dark death wish, a nihilistic desire for fame at any cost, a fame that will outlive your short, brutal life. You can choose this life. You can become you go before a magistrate. You willingly and publicly sign a contract, a legal document that trades your freedom for a set period of service in the arena. You swear the sacred gladiatorial oath, the sacramentum gladiatorium. You solemnly swear to be burned, to be bound, to be beaten, to be killed by the sword. In that moment, you cease to be a full citizen. You surrender your body and your life into the hands of the lanista. Your friends and family may disown you. You are choosing to become an infamous, an outcast. But you do it for the signing bonus, a sum of money that might save your family from starvation. Or you do it for the promise of the roar of the crowd. Whichever path you took, the conquered warrior, the rebellious slave, the condemned criminal, the desperate free man, the destination is the same. The heavy iron-studded gates of the ludus swing shut behind you. The sound of the bolt sliding home is the sound of your old life ending. Your name is gone. Your past is gone. Your freedom, whether by force or by choice, is gone. You are now, simply, a gladiator. A man who is already dead, who must now learn to kill with exquisite skill in order to live just one more day. The ludus is your new world. It is your home, your barracks, your prison, and your place of work all in one. It is a self-contained universe, sealed off from the city outside by high walls and armed guards. The very air inside seems different, thick with the smell of sweat, of stale straw, of oiled leather, of fear, and of iron. It is owned and run by the lanista, a man who is both your master and your promoter. He is a figure of low social standing in Roman society, despised by the elite, as a dealer in death and filth. But within these walls, his power is absolute. He holds your life in his hands. You are his investment, his familia gladiatoria. He will feed you, house you, and have you trained to the peak of physical lethality, all with the singular goal of renting you out to the games for a handsome profit. Your first days are a period of assessment and initiation. You are stripped naked and brought into the central training yard. Here, you are examined by the lanista and his senior trainers, the doctors. These men are often retired gladiators themselves. Their bodies a roadmap of scars, their eyes cold and assessing. They prod your muscles, they check your teeth, they force you to run, to jump, to lift heavy stones. They are not looking for the sculpted perfection of a Greek statue. They are looking for raw material. They are assessing your strength, your speed, your stamina, your aggression, your fear. Based on this grim inspection, they will decide what kind of killer you will become, which specific armatura you will be trained to inhabit. The daily routine is a crucible of brutal, monotonous, and painful labor, designed to break you down and rebuild you as a weapon. Your day begins before the sun has risen. You are roused from your small, shared cell by the sharp voice of a guard. You are herded into the common area for the morning meal. It is not a pleasant affair. It is a functional intake of fuel, a bowl of thick, warm barley porridge, or pulse, and a cup of water. You eat it quickly, silently. Then, the training begins. The first and most important part of your education takes place at the palace. This is a heavy wooden stake, about 6 feet high, driven firmly into the ground of the training yard. It is your first and most tireless opponent. You are given a heavy wooden sword, the rudis, which is deliberately made to be twice the weight of a real sword, and a heavy wicker shield. And for hours, under the hot sun, you attack the palace. You practice your strikes, the thrust, the slash, the parry. You practice your footwork, circling the post, learning to maintain your balance, learning to move with both speed and stability. The doctors circle you, like wolves. They carry a long rod or a whip. If your stance is wrong, if your shield drops, if your attention wanders for a single second, they will lash you with it. The sharp pain, a brutal but effective teacher. The training is relentless. It is designed to push you far beyond your perceived limits. You are forced to run, to jump, to carry heavy weights until your muscles burn with a fire you have never known, until your lungs feel as if they will burst. Your body is remade by this repetitive, grueling work. The soft flesh of a civilian is stripped away, replaced by hard, functional muscle. The calluses on your hands grow thick and hard. You are no longer a farmer or a soldier. You are being transformed, day by painful day. into a living weapon. In the afternoon, after another simple meal, the training might become more specialized. You begin to work with the real, weighted armor and blunted weapons of your assigned gladiatorial type. You learn to handle the immense weight of a bronze helmet, to see the world through its narrow, restrictive eyes. You feel the sweat pool around your eyes, the claustrophobia of being encased in metal. You learn the particular, deadly dance of the ritiarius, casting the heavy net again and again until your shoulder aches. You practice the close-quarters brutality of the murmelo, learning to use your great shield not just for defense, but as a weapon itself, to smash and unbalance your opponent. The social structure of the ludus is a complex and unforgiving hierarchy. As a new recruit, a tyro, you are at the very bottom. You are given the worst food, the smallest cell, the most grueling tasks. You are the target of bullying and casual cruelty from the veteran gladiators, the veterani. These are the men who have survived. They have fought in the arena and returned. Their bodies are covered in the terrifying hieroglyphs of their trade, the long, pale scars of sword cuts, the puckered marks of trident wounds. They hold a position of immense respect and authority. You learn from them. You watch them train with a terrifying skill, and you fear them. And yet, a strange and powerful camaraderie can form in this place. A bond forged in shared misery, in the collective experience of pain and the constant presence of death. The men you train with, the men you share your cell with, become your only family. You might share your meager rations with a messmate who has been punished. You might help bind a fellow trainee's wounds after a particularly brutal session. Small communities, or collegia, might form a brotherhood of the condemned who look out for each other. But you always know, in the back of your mind, that one day you might be forced to face that same man, your only friend in this hell. Across the blood-soaked sand of the arena, the ludus is a place of profound contradictions. It is a prison, but it is also a place where your body is cared for with a surprising, almost loving, diligence. You are a valuable piece of property, a prize animal being fattened for a show. The lanista cannot afford for you to be sick or weak. The food, though bland, is plentiful and high in energy. The medical care is often excellent. Broken bones are set, wounds are stitched and cleaned. At night, you are locked back in your cell. The sounds of the ludis are your lullaby. The distant, rhythmic clang of wooden swords striking the palus. The grunts and groans of exhausted men. The quiet, scraping sound of a veteran sharpening the edge of his real sword in preparation for the games. You lie on your straw pallet, your body aching, and you stare into the darkness, and you wonder, will you be one of the ones who survives? Forget the image that has been carved into the modern imagination by sculptors and filmmakers. Forget the vision of the perfectly sculpted, low body fat, muscle-bound warrior, his every sinew visible like a marble statue. The reality of the gladiator's physique was very different, and it was deliberately engineered, not for aesthetic beauty, but for brutal, functional survivability. This physique was the direct result of a specific, monotonous, and surprisingly scientific diet. The Roman writer, Pliny the Elder, in a tone that was perhaps slightly mocking, referred to gladiators as horderi, the barley men. This was not an insult. It was a literal, almost clinical, description of their daily sustenance. Your life in the ludus is governed by routine, and the core of that routine is your diet. Your daily food ration is not a warrior's feast of roasted meat and fine fruits. That is a luxury reserved for the cena libra, the last supper before the games. Your daily reality is far more humble. It is a high-carbohydrate, high-calorie, and profoundly monotonous diet designed for one primary purpose: to build bulk. Your meals consist almost entirely of grains and legumes. Barley is the staple, the foundation of your existence. You eat it boiled into a thick, tasteless porridge or pulse 3 times a day. It is heavy, it is filling, it provides a massive amount of energy for the grueling training sessions. It is also, crucially for your master, the lanista, incredibly cheap. Alongside the barley, you might be given beans, lentils or oats, also boiled into a stew. There is very little meat. Meat was expensive, a luxury for the wealthy. The lanista is a businessman, and he is not going to waste his profits on providing his stable of fighters with expensive protein, when cheap grain can build the kind of body he needs. This diet was not an accident of economics. It was a deliberate strategy. The high-carbohydrate regimen, day after day, week after week, helped to build up a thick layer of subcutaneous fat over your hard-earned muscles. this layer of fat was not a sign of being out of shape or undisciplined. It was a form of natural, organic armor. In the arena, a fighter is likely to suffer numerous shallow cuts and slashes from the tip of a sword or the prongs of a trident, a cut that would slice deep into the muscle of a lean, sinewy man, causing intense pain and rapid muscle fatigue, might only penetrate this protective layer of fat on a well-fed gladiator. This padding protected the underlying muscles and vital organs from minor wounds, preventing a fight from being ended prematurely by a superficial but debilitating cut. Furthermore, this fatty layer served a purpose for the spectacle itself. A cut into fat tends to bleed profusely, but the wound itself is not as serious. This created a bloodier, and therefore more exciting, spectacle for the crowd, without necessarily putting the valuable gladiator out of commission. The crowd got its bloodlust satisfied, and the Lannister's investment remained relatively intact. You were being fattened like a prize animal, not just for strength, but for show. So you eat your barley, you feel yourself growing heavier, stronger, but also softer. You are not a finely tuned athlete in the modern sense of the word. You are a heavyweight brawler, a human battering ram, built for endurance, for absorbing punishment, and for surviving the initial storm of any combat. However, the Romans, with their practical genius, understood that this limited diet had its own dangers. A diet so lacking in variety, particularly in minerals, could lead to weak bones and poor health. To counteract this, gladiators were given a special, and likely revolting, daily drink. This was a concoction made from plant and wood ash, sometimes even bone ash, mixed with water or sour wine vinegar to make it palatable. It sounds like a primitive and disgusting folk remedy, but modern science has revealed its powerful effectiveness. The ash of burned plants is incredibly rich in minerals, particularly calcium and strontium. In the 1990s, archaeologists excavating a gladiator cemetery in Ephesus made a remarkable discovery. Through bone density analysis, they found that the skeletons of these gladiators contained astonishingly high levels of calcium and strontium, far higher than the average Roman citizen of the same period. This ash drink was a primitive, but highly effective, mineral supplement. It helped to strengthen their bones, making them more resistant to fractures. It aided in the rapid healing of the constant breaks and injuries sustained during training. This was ancient sports science in its most raw and pragmatic form, and injuries were a constant, unavoidable part of life in the ludus. The daily training with heavy wooden weapons, the full contact sparring sessions, all led to a litany of sprains, bruises, and broken bones. Here again, the pragmatic nature of the Lannister as a businessman came into play. He could not afford to lose his valuable investments to infection or poorly healed injuries. Therefore, the medical care within a ludus was often surprisingly advanced for the time, far better than what a common Roman citizen could ever hope to receive. The Lannister would employ skilled doctors, often highly educated Greeks, to patch up his stable of fighters. These men were not quacks, they were experts in treating trauma. They were masters of setting bones, of stitching deep wounds, of cleaning infections, and of managing pain with poultices and herbal remedies. The famous physician Galen, one of the most important and influential medical figures in all of history, began his career as a doctor at a gladiator school in his hometown of Pergamon. It was here that he honed his unparalleled knowledge of human anatomy and surgery. By treating the horrific, gaping wounds of the arena, he was able to study the structure of muscles, tendons, and organs in a way that would have been impossible otherwise. The bodies of the gladiators became his textbooks. So your body becomes a living paradox. It is fed the diet of a peasant, yet supplemented with a scientifically advanced mineral drink. It is subjected to daily violence and trauma, yet cared for by some of the most skilled doctors in the Roman world. It is being simultaneously built up and broken down, prepared for a public spectacle of pain, but maintained with the meticulous care one would give to a priceless object. You are a temple of violence, and your body is both the sacrifice to be offered and the altar upon which it will be laid. Every meal, every training session, every medical treatment is a calculated investment in the bloody spectacle to come. You are not just a gladiator. That is a generic term, a label for the uninitiated. Within the walls of the ludus, you are molded, shaped, and trained to become a specific type of fighter, an armatura, the Roman genius for spectacle, the same genius that engineered massive aqueducts and staged mock naval battles inside the Colosseum, demanded variety in its human combat. The crowd grew bored of seeing the same style of fighting again and again. So, a complex and fascinating system of gladiator types evolved, each with its own unique equipment, appearance, history, and fighting style. These matchups were rarely a simple mirror match of equals. They were often deliberately designed to be asymmetrical, pitting speed against power, defense against offense, a long-range weapon against a short-range one. This created a tactical puzzle for the fighters to solve in the heat of combat, and a dramatic, easy-to-read narrative for the crowd to enjoy. Based on your initial assessment, your size, your speed, your natural temperament, Lannister and his doctors will assign you your fate, your role in this deadly theater. Let us walk through the armory of the damned, the armamentarium, and examine some of these deadly roles you might be forced to inhabit. Perhaps, if you are quick, agile, and light on your feet, with excellent reflexes, you will be trained as a Rhysarius, the netman. You are the most lightly armed of all gladiators, and instantly recognizable. Your appearance is a stylized representation of a fisherman. You wear no helmet, a terrifying disadvantage that leaves your head and face completely exposed. You wear no body armor, and you carry no shield. Your only protection is a high metal guard on your left shoulder, the gallerus, which you use to protect your neck and face, and a padded guard on your left arm, the manica. Your weapons are the tools of a fisherman, adapted for murder. You carry a weighted net, the reti, a long sharp-pronged trident, the fustina, and a small pugnacious dagger, the pugio, for use as a last resort. Your entire strategy is based on speed, distance, and entanglement. You are a dancer of death. You circle your opponent, always moving, never staying still, a difficult target for a heavily encumbered foe. You look for the perfect moment, a lapse in his concentration, a shift in his footing, to cast your net. If it lands true, if it envelops your opponent, you can trip him, entangle his weapon, and render him helpless. Then you move in with the trident, its long prongs perfect for finding the gaps in his armor. But if you miss, if your one crucial cast goes wide, your advantage is lost. You are left vulnerable, armed only with your long, unwieldy spear and a small knife, forced to face a fully armored killer who is now enraged. Your most common opponent is the secutor, the pursuer. His very existence is defined by his opposition to you. He is designed for one purpose, to hunt down and kill the Rhysarius. The secutor wears a heavy, smooth, distinctive egg-shaped helmet with only two tiny, circular eye holes. This helmet is designed specifically to defend against your trident, offering no edges for the prongs to catch on, and protecting the face from a direct thrust. He carries the large, rectangular shield of the Roman legionary, the scutum, and the classic Roman shortsword, the gladiators. The matchup is a classic one, a narrative the crowd can instantly understand. The nimble, lightly armed fisherman against the heavily armed, relentless, walking fortress. The secutor must patiently and methodically close the distance, weathering your trident strikes with his great shield, while you must keep him at bay, always moving, always looking for that one perfect chance to throw your net. Or perhaps your build is different. You are strong, powerful, with a solid frame. You are suited to heavy infantry combat. In this case, you might be trained as a murmillo. The murmillo is a classic, heavily armed gladiator, a powerhouse of the arena. He wears a large, ornate helmet with a wide brim, often decorated with the image of a fish, a murmur, which gives him his name. He wears a linen loincloth, a thick belt, a padded guard on his right arm, and a single, tall shin guard, or ochria, on his exposed left leg. He carries the large, rectangular scutum and the deadly gladius. He is a wall of bronze and wood, a master of close-quarters sword and shield combat. His fighting style is efficient, brutal, and based on the battle-tested tactics of the Roman legion. The murmillo was often pitted against other national styles, creating a stylized reenactment of Rome's great military victories. His opponent might be the Threx, the Thracian. The Threx represents one of Rome's earliest and most stubborn enemies from the region of Thrace. He is equipped, similarly to the murmillo, with an arm guard and uniquely, two tall shin guards. But his shield is a small, square, or rectangular buckler, the parmula, which offers far less protection than the murmillo's great shield. His helmet is also distinctive, a broad-brimmed helmet with a characteristic griffin crest, and his most important feature, the one that defines his fighting style, is his sword, a short, curved Thracian scimitar. The seek of this curved blade is a specialized tool designed to get around the edges of a large shield, like the murmillos, to hook behind it and to slash at the exposed back and legs. The fight between a murmillo and a threx is a fascinating tactical battle. The straight sword and large shield against the curved sword and small shield. There are many other types, a whole deadly pantheon of fighters. There is the hoplomachus, equipped like a Greek hoplite warrior, with a long spear, a short sword, and a small, round shield. There is the eques, the knight, who began his fight on horseback with a lance, before dismounting to fight on foot with a sword. There were the esideri, who fought from war chariots, a style inspired by the warriors of Britain. There was the exotic and fearsome Cropularius, a heavily armored fighter from Gaul, encased from head to toe in segmented iron armor, slow-moving but almost invulnerable. And then there was the rare and strange Andibata, who fought blind, wearing a helmet with no eye holes at all. Forced to listen for the sounds of his opponent's movements, you do not choose your type. It is assigned to you, based on your physical attributes and the needs of the local games. You will spend months, perhaps years, mastering the specific, unique skills of your armatura. Your body learns its rhythms, its stances, its particular forms of violence. This role becomes your new identity. You are no longer Marcus the slave from Sicily, or Vercingetorix the Gaulish chieftain. You are a Rhetorius. You are a Secutor. You are a Merlot. You are a living weapon, defined by the armor you wear and the particular manner in which you are expected to kill. The life of a gladiator is a life lived as a paradox, a walking, breathing contradiction that lies at the very heart of Roman society. In the eyes of the law, and in the opinion of the educated, aristocratic elite, you are the lowest of the low. You are branded with the legal and social stain of infamy. You are an infamous, a person of infamy. Literally, one without honor. This was not just a social stigma, it was a formal legal status. As an infamous, your legal standing was the same as that of a prostitute, an actor, a pimp, or a convicted criminal. You were legally disgraced. This had profound real-world consequences. You could not vote in elections. You could not hold any form of public office. You could not stand for a position in the military legions. You could not make a will or inherit property in the normal way. You were, in essence, a non-person in the eyes of Roman civic life. The very senators and wealthy equestrians who would pay a fortune to watch you fight, who would cheer your name in the arena, would refuse to dine with you in their homes. To them, you were socially toxic, a creature of a lower, bloodier, more contemptible world. You were a thing, not a person, an object of entertainment, to be used and discarded. And yet, in the eyes of the common people, in the bustling, celebrity-obsessed world of Rome and the provincial cities, the successful gladiator was a superstar, a living legend, a god among men. Outside the grim, disciplined reality of the ludus, your name, if you were good, would be known throughout the city. Children in the streets would play gladiator, arguing over who got to be you. Archaeologists have found small, articulated clay dolls, the ancient world's action figures, modeled after the most famous gladiators of the day, each with their correct armor and weaponry. Your image might be found on expensive mosaics laid into the floors of wealthy villas, on cheap, mass-produced pottery, on the side of a bronze oil lamp that would light a family's evening meal. Your victories, your statistics, were a matter of public record and intense debate, like the sports heroes of today. The walls of the cities were the newspapers of the common people, and they were covered in graffiti celebrating your prowess. In the ruins of Pompeii, these declarations of fandom are preserved forever. Celadus, the Thracian, the sigh of the girls, one reads. Another declares a fighter named Crescens, a Rhetorius, to be the master of the girls. You were the hero of the common people, a symbol of raw, masculine power, of martial virtues, courage, in a world where most citizens would never see a real battlefield. You represented a primal ideal of Roman strength that the common man could admire and the wealthy woman could desire. This adoration was not just from afar. You were a potent sex symbol, the combination of extreme physical prowess, a life lived on the edge of death, and your low social status made you a figure of intense, taboo fascination, particularly for women of the upper classes. Your very sweat was considered a powerful aphrodisiac. After a training session, your sweat, mixed with the oil and dust from your skin, would be scraped from your body with a metal tool called this mixture, the strigmenta, was collected by slaves and sold in small, expensive vials in the city's perfume shops. Wealthy Roman women, the wives of the very senators who despised you, would buy this concoction and mix it into their cosmetics, their face creams. They believed that by applying your sweat to their skin, they could capture some of your dangerous masculine vitality and become irresistible to their lovers. And some women were not content with just your sweat. Wealthy, married matrons, bored with their staid, respectable lives, became the ancient world's equivalent of groupies. They would become your most ardent fans, your patrons. They might shower you with gifts of money and fine food. Some would go even further, paying your lanista a small fortune for a private, secret assignation with their favorite fighter. The satirist poet Juvenal wrote, with withering disgust of a senator's wife, a noblewoman named Epia, who abandoned her husband, her family, and her reputation to run off to Egypt with her gladiator lover, a man she had fallen in love with. As Juvenal put it, for his scars and his broken nose, you live in this strange, disorienting twilight world. Legally, you are filth. Culturally, you are a phenomenon. Socially, you are an object of both terror and intense desire. This fame might bring you small comforts within the brutal world of the ludus: better food, a private cell, the respect of your fellow fighters. It certainly brings you to the attention of the lanista, who sees you as his prize asset, his golden goose. He will protect you, care for you, and perhaps even treat you with a certain degree of respect. But this fame is a fragile, double-edged sword. It is a fire that can warm you, or it can consume you. It is entirely dependent on your performance in the arena. It lasts only as long as you keep winning, as long as you keep providing a thrilling, skillful, and courageous spectacle. One bad fight, one moment of perceived cowardice, one humiliating defeat, and the adoration of the crowd can turn to vicious scorn in an instant. The same people who chanted your name as you entered the arena will be the ones screaming "Ugula! Slay him!" their thumbs turned to signal your death. Your fame gives you no security. It only raises the stakes. And so you learn to live with this profound, daily paradox. You are an outcast and a celebrity, a slave and a hero, a thing to be reviled and a thing to be desired. You are owned, body and soul, by your lanista, but your image, your story, your public persona, belongs to the Roman mob. You are a living embodiment of the deep contradictions of Roman civilization itself, its fascination with violence, its cult of courage, and its bottomless appetite for death as entertainment. You are a dark mirror held up to the face of the empire, and in your scarred reflection, Rome saw both its greatest strengths and its most profound sicknesses. After months, perhaps even years, of the same relentless, grinding routine within the high, windowless walls of the ludus, the day finally comes. A notice, an edictum munoris, is painted on a public wall in the city. It is an advertisement for the upcoming munora, the gladiatorial games, sponsored by a wealthy magistrate or nobleman seeking to win the favor of the people. The notice details the occasion for the games, the name of the sponsoring editor, and, most importantly, a list of the pairs of gladiators who will be fighting. Your lanista has been contracted to provide the fighters, the human stock for this public spectacle. Your name is on the list. The moment the news spreads through the ludus, the atmosphere changes. The monotonous rhythm of training is broken by a new, palpable tension. It is a quiet, heavy energy, a mixture of raw fear, nervous anticipation, and a kind of grim, fatalistic resignation. The familiar sounds of the training yard seem different now, sharper, more serious. The clang of wooden swords on the palace sounds less like practice and more like a rehearsal for death. In the days leading up to the games, the normal routine is suspended. You are brought out of the seclusion of the ludus and put on public display. This is the pompa, the grand procession, a vital part of the pre-game hype. You are not dressed in your fighting gear, but in fine, richly embroidered robes, the property of the lanista. You march through the main streets of the city, part of a grand parade that includes musicians playing pipes and horns, priests carrying religious standards, and the editor himself, riding in a chariot, soaking in the adulation of the crowd. This procession is a piece of magnificent political and commercial theater. The people of the city line the streets to see you. They see your physique, your confident stride, your warrior's bearing. They read the painted programs that list the matchups, the odds, your past record of victories and defeats, and they begin to choose their favorites. They begin to place their bets with the bookmakers who set up stalls in the forum. You are no longer just a fighter. You are a racehorse, a commodity being assessed before the race. The night before the games, a special dinner is held for all the gladiators who are scheduled to fight. This is the cena libera, the free dinner. This is not the usual bland, functional fare of barley and bean porridge. This is a lavish feast, a banquet. There are platters of roasted meat, pork, beef, game birds. There are bowls of exotic fruits, fine bread, and, most importantly, an abundance of good wine. This is not an act of kindness or generosity. Like everything else in your life, it serves a specific, calculated purpose. For the public, who are often allowed to come and watch you eat, it is another chance to see the combatants up close, to assess their form, their mood, their confidence. It is a form of pre-game entertainment, fueling the gossip and the betting. For you, the gladiator, the experience is profoundly strange and surreal. You sit at a long table, eating and drinking alongside the very men you may be forced to kill, or be killed by, in less than 24 hours. The reactions of the gladiators at this Last Supper vary greatly. Some, particularly the new recruits or the desperate, gorge themselves. They drink heavily, they laugh loudly, they indulge in this one final night of sensory pleasure, a last taste of the good things in a life that has been defined by deprivation. Others are too consumed by fear to eat. Their stomachs are twisted into tight, acid knots. They might sip at a cup of wine, but they cannot face the food. They sit in silence, their eyes vacant, their minds already on the sand. And then there are the veterans, the stoic professionals. The Roman philosopher Seneca, who witnessed one such dinner, wrote with a kind of fascinated horror at the men's apparent indifference. He described how they ate and drank normally, how they spoke calmly of the next day's combat, discussing tactics, analyzing their opponent's weaknesses, as if it were just another day's work. But beneath this hardened, professional exterior, the fear must have been a cold, heavy presence in the pit of the stomach. This is also a time for settling one's affairs. You might take aside a literate slave belonging to the lanista and dictate a message to be sent to a family member you have not seen in years. You might give away what few possessions you have, a lucky charm, a small carved token to a friend in the ludus who is not fighting tomorrow. You are a man preparing for his own death. This is your last supper. After the dinner, you are led back, not to the familiar cells of the ludus, but to the holding cells beneath the amphitheater itself. You descend into the dark, damp, labyrinthine tunnels that are the bowels of the great arena. The air here is cool and smells of damp earth, of wild animals, and of old blood. You are locked into a small, stone cell. Sleep does not come easily. The sounds of the city are different tonight, louder, more festive, a drunken roar that filters down through the stone. You can hear the crowd above, a sound like a great, distant ocean, a roar of 80,000 voices, all hungry for the spectacle you are about to provide. You lie on your straw pallet, and you think of the dawn. You think of the sand, of its color, of its texture. You think of the weight of your bronze helmet, the familiar feel of your sword's hilt in your hand. You think of your opponent. You visualize the fight. You run through his known moves, his weaknesses, his strengths. You plan your opening move, your defense, your counters. You are a professional, and this is your mental preparation. You might also offer a quiet prayer. The goddess of the gladiators was Nemesis, the winged goddess of fate, of balance, and of divine retribution. A small shrine to her was found near every amphitheater. You are not praying for victory. You are not praying for your life. That is a fool's prayer. You are praying for courage. You are praying for the strength to face your fate without shame. You are praying for a good death. In the morning, you are roused by a guard. There is no breakfast today, only waiting. You are given your armor, your weapons. You check every strap, every buckle. Your fellow gladiators help you arm, a quiet, somber ritual of preparation. The bronze of your helmet is cold against your skin. The weight of your shield feels reassuringly familiar on your arm. Then you are led out of your cell and into the dark, narrow tunnels beneath the great arena, the passageways that lead to the gates of the underworld. You line up with the other gladiators, a silent, armored procession. You can hear the orchestra in the arena above, playing a loud, brassy fanfare. The roar of the crowd is a physical thing now, a vibration that you feel in your chest. The moment has come. The great gates swing open, and you march out of the darkness and into the blinding, brilliant light of the arena. The sudden sensory overload is overwhelming. The heat of the sun, the impossible scale of the building, the wall of sound from the crowd that hits you like a physical wave. You march in a slow, deliberate procession around the perimeter of the sand, a final parade for the masses. You pass the imperial box, where the emperor himself sits in his purple toga. You raise your right arm in a formal salute, and you speak the famous fatalistic words, not with boastful bravado, but with a profound and chilling acceptance of your fate. Avenu, imperator, moritori te salutant. Hail, emperor, we who are about to die salute you. The preliminaries are over. The games are about to begin. You stand on the hot, yellow sand of the arena floor. The sand, the arena, which gives this place its name, is raked smooth, a pristine canvas for the bloody art that is about to be painted upon it. It is therefore a very practical reason to soak up the blood, the sweat, the vomit, and the other fluids that will be spilled in the hours to come. You look up at the vast tiered seating of the amphitheater, the Colosseum, perhaps a dizzying, elliptical bowl of humanity. You see the sea of white togas in the lower tiers, where the senators and equestrians sit. You see the colorful dresses of the women in their segregated sections, and you see the great teeming mass of the common people, the plebs, in the upper tiers, a shouting, waving, anonymous multitude. The noise they make is a physical pressure, a constant, deafening roar that drowns out everything else, even the frantic beating of your own heart. This is the moment your entire existence in the ludus, every drop of sweat, every aching muscle, every moment of fear, has been building towards. The day's events have been long and bloody. The morning began with the venations, the wild beast hunts. From the dark tunnels beneath the arena, exotic and terrifying animals from the farthest reaches of the empire, lions from Africa, tigers from Parthia, elephants, rhinoceroses, bears, crocodiles, were released onto the sand. They were slaughtered by specialized hunters called bestiarii, who used spears, bows, and nets in spectacular choreographed displays. At midday, during the lunch break, when most of the wealthy spectators would leave, came the noxi, the public executions of condemned criminals. This was the low point of the day's entertainment, a grim and brutal spectacle. The condemned, with no armor and no training, were thrown to the starving beasts, or handed weapons and forced to fight each other to the death in a chaotic, pathetic melee. Sometimes, the executions were staged as elaborate, mythological reenactments. A criminal might be dressed as Orpheus and torn apart by bears, or tied to a cross to be crucified, or dressed in a flammable tunic and burned alive as a human torch to illuminate the arena. The crowd has been warmed up, desensitized, and made hungry with a long appetizer of blood. Now, in the afternoon, it is time for the main event. It is time for the professional killers. It is time for the gladiators. A herald, his voice amplified by the arena's acoustics, announces your name, your ludus, and your record of victories. He then announces your opponent. You walk to your starting positions at opposite ends of the great ellipse. You look across the shimmering expanse of sand at the man you must now try to kill. You may know him. He may have been your training partner for years, your messmate, your friend. But in this moment, all of that is gone. He is simply your opponent, the living, breathing obstacle between you and another day of life. The fight begins not with a wild, chaotic rush, but on the signal of the referee, the rudis, he and his assistant, both carrying long staffs to separate the fighters if necessary, will oversee the duel. It is not a street brawl. It is a skilled, tactical contest, governed by strict rules and expectations. The crowd, connoisseurs of violence, expects a display of skill, of ours. A sloppy, cowardly, or boring fight could earn you their scorn, which is often more dangerous than your opponent's sword. Let us imagine your fight. You are a retiarius, the net man. Your opponent is the heavily armed Sictor. The tactical puzzle is clear to everyone watching. You must use your superior speed and agility to stay out of his reach. You dance on the balls of your bare feet. You feint. You circle him, your trident held low, a constant, prodding threat. The sand, raked smooth only moments ago, is now kicked up around your feet, a fine yellow dust that sticks to your sweating skin. The secutor is a relentless, walking wall of bronze and wood. He presses forward patiently, methodically, his great shield held high, the tiny islets of his helmet giving him a terrifying, inhuman appearance. He is trying to corner you against the wall of the arena, to cut off your movement, to bring his short, deadly sword into range. The crowd roars with every move, every feint, every miss. It is a drama of speed versus power. You see an opening. As he lunges, you sidestep, whirl, and cast your net. It flies through the hot air, a wide, weighted circle of rope. The crowd gasps. But the secutor is skilled, and he is trained for this exact moment. He drops his shield low and turns his body, and the net slides over his smooth helmet and his curved shield, landing harmlessly on the sand behind him. A great collective groan of disappointment rises from the 80,000 spectators. You have lost your primary weapon. You have missed your best chance. Now you must rely on your long, unwieldy trident and your small dagger. The odds have shifted dramatically against you. The secutor presses his advantage. He knows you are vulnerable. He comes at you, no longer cautious, but aggressive. His sword is a blur. You parry his strikes with the long wooden shaft of your trident, the sharp clang of metal on metal echoing in the vast space. He gets too close. His shield, not just a defensive tool but a powerful offensive weapon, slams into your body, knocking the wind from your lungs and sending you staggering backward. You stumble and fall heavily to the sand. This is the moment of truth. The secutor stands over you, his shield pressing you down, the point of his gladius at your throat. The fight is over. You have been clearly and honorably defeated, but your fate is not yet sealed. With your last ounce of strength, you raise your left hand, your index finger extended towards the editor's box. This is the ad digitum, the formal sign of surrender. You are appealing for missio. You are appealing for mercy. And now, the decision leaves the hands of the fighters and passes to the crowd, and to the editor of the games, who is the ultimate arbiter of your life. The editor looks out at the vast audience. They have watched the fight. They have judged your performance. Did you fight bravely? Did you show skill? Did you provide a good show? If they believe you have, if you are a crowd favorite, they may shout for miss. They might wave white cloths or handkerchiefs. If they are displeased, if they feel you fought poorly or with cowardice, they will scream their disapproval. They will scream Eucla, slay him. Their thumbs, contrary to the popular myth, were likely hidden in their fists as a sign for mercy polis compresso, and pointed upwards, representing a drawn sword, for death polis verso. The editor, a politician whose popularity depends on the goodwill of the mob, almost always follows their will. He gives the signal. Let us imagine the crowd is merciful today. You fought well. You provided a good spectacle. The roar is one of approval. The editor spares you. The secutor withdraws his sword. You are allowed to rise, to leave the arena, defeated but alive. You will return to the ludus, to heal your wounds and your pride, and you will fight another day. But let us imagine a different outcome. The crowd, thirsty for blood, roars for your death. The editor, bowing to their will, gives the fatal signal. There is no appeal. This is the end. Now, your final duty as a gladiator, the culmination of all your training, is to die well. You are expected to accept the death blow without flinching, without screaming, without begging for your life. That would be a disgrace. You are to kneel, perhaps even grasp the blade of your opponent's sword and guide it to your own throat, to show your absolute contempt for death. This is the ultimate expression of Roman virtues. A good death could earn you more respect and fame than a lifetime of victories. The secutor's blade finds your neck. The world dissolves into a flash of brilliant, white light and a sudden, final darkness. The hot sand drinks your blood. Your body is unceremoniously removed from the arena. An attendant dressed as Charon, the mythical ferryman of the underworld, strikes your head with a hammer to ensure you are dead. Another, dressed as Mercury, prods you with a hot iron. Then you are dragged by hooks through the gate of Libitina, the Roman goddess of death. In the eyes of Rome, you have fulfilled your purpose. The show goes on. Death on the sands of the arena was the most common end for a gladiator. For the vast majority of men who entered the ludus, the gate of Libitina was their only exit. But it was not the only one. For a select, skillful, and incredibly lucky few, there existed a path to a life beyond the games. There was a chance at freedom, a prize more coveted than any amount of gold, more meaningful than the roar of any crowd. The ultimate prize for a gladiator was not money, nor fame, nor the illicit attentions of a wealthy matron. It was the rudis. The rudis was a simple wooden sword, a replica of the heavy practice sword you used for countless hours at the palace in the training yard. It was an object of no intrinsic value, but when it was awarded to a gladiator in the center of the arena by the sponsoring editor of the games, it was a symbol of immense, life-altering significance. It was a certificate of retirement. It was a formal discharge from service. It was your release from the obligation to die. To earn the rudis was a near impossible feat. It required a combination of extraordinary skill, unwavering courage, and an almost supernatural degree of luck. You had to compile a remarkable career. You had to survive and win, consistently, for years. A single defeat could mean death. A single serious injury could end your career. You had to become a champion, a primus palis, the top-ranked fighter in your You had to become a crowd favorite, a living legend whose name was chanted by thousands. The decision to award the rudis was entirely at the discretion of the editor of the games. It was often given after a particularly spectacular fight, perhaps after defeating another renowned champion. It was a grand, public gesture of respect, a recognition from the Roman state that a gladiator had given the people years of thrilling entertainment and had earned his right to live. Imagine the moment. You've just won another hard-fought victory. The crowd is roaring your name. The editor motions for you to approach the imperial box. You stand before him, bleeding, exhausted, your heart pounding. He makes a speech, extolling your virtues, listing your famous victories, and then an attendant brings forward the simple wooden sword. The editor presents it to you. The crowd erupts. In that moment, your life changes forever. You are no longer a gladiator. If you were a slave or a condemned criminal, you are now a free man. You are granted your liberty in a formal public ceremony, perhaps by the touch of a magistrate's staff, the vindictor. Your head is shaved to show your new status as a libertus, a freedman. If you entered the games as a free citizen, an octoratus, you have fulfilled your contract and are released from your sacred oath. You can walk out of the arena, not through the gate of death, but through the main gates, a free man. You can walk out of the ludus, leaving its stench of sweat and fear behind you forever. You can walk back into the world. But what did this freedom actually mean? What kind of life awaited a retired gladiator, a rudis? For many, the transition was profoundly difficult. You were a man trained from a young age for nothing but institutionalized violence. Your entire existence had been defined by a brutal, simple routine of training, fighting, and survival. The world outside the ludus was a strange, complex, and often unwelcoming place. Your body was a living testament to your former life, a landscape of hideous scars that marked you forever. You might be suffering from chronic, debilitating pain from old injuries. You might have early-onset arthritis, a limp, a missing eye, and you might be suffering from what we would now recognize as a form of post-traumatic stress, haunted by the memories of the men you had killed and the friends you had seen die. Some retired gladiators simply disappeared, using their accumulated prize money and gifts from admirers to live quiet, anonymous lives. They might use their small fortune to buy a plot of land and become a farmer, or to open a tavern or a small shop in a provincial town, far from the roar of the arena and the memories it held. They might marry and raise a family, their children perhaps never knowing the full, brutal truth of their father's past. But many found it impossible to leave the world they knew. Their skills were too specialized, their fame too powerful, their identity too deeply intertwined with the arena. The most common career path for a retired champion was to stay within the world of the games. They became trainers, the doctors at a ludus, perhaps even the very one where they themselves had been trained. Their experience was invaluable to a lanista. They knew every trick, every technique, every psychological weakness of a fighter. They could spot raw talent in a new recruit. They were often harsh, demanding, and brutally effective teachers, having little sympathy for the men now suffering through the same brutal training they once endured. They had survived the crucible, and they expected nothing less from their students. Some became independent tutors, offering their services to wealthy young aristocrats who fancied learning the art of the sword. Others found employment as referees, the summa rudis, overseeing the duels in the arena, their veterans' eye ensuring that the rules were followed. A few of the most famous and charismatic became bodyguards for the wealthy and powerful. A famous, battle-hardened ex-gladiator was a powerful status symbol and a very effective deterrent to any would-be assassins, rivals, or street thugs. They would stand, scarred and silent, behind the sedan chair of a wealthy senator or merchant, their reputation alone a more potent weapon than any sword. But freedom was not always a happy ending. Some gladiators, even after being awarded the rudis, found themselves unable to adjust to a life of peace. The lure of the crowd's roar, the visceral, addictive adrenaline of combat, the fame, and the prize money could be a powerful siren's call. Or perhaps they simply could not cope with the quiet, the lack of structure, the absence of the constant, familiar presence of death. They were men built for violence, and they were lost without it. They would choose to return to the arena, fighting on as free men, until the day the sand finally, inevitably, claimed them. The rudis represented a dream. It was a near impossible goal, a glimmer of light in a world of profound darkness, that kept many men fighting with a courage they might not otherwise have possessed. It was a symbol that even in this most brutal and fatalistic of worlds, there was a slim, improbable chance of survival, a chance to win back the life that had been forfeited so long ago. But for every man who walked proudly out of the arena with a simple wooden sword held high, there were thousands upon thousands who were dragged out through the gate of death, their lives seeping into the sand, their only reward a fleeting roar from an indifferent crowd. When we think of gladiators, our imagination is immediately drawn to Rome. We think of the Colosseum, that great, enduring, broken monument to organized slaughter, standing as the eternal symbol of the games. But the Munera, the gladiatorial games, were not confined to the capital. They were a defining feature of Roman civilization, a cultural institution as fundamental as the aqueduct or the legionary fortress. They spread to every corner of the vast Roman Empire, a testament to the universal appeal of this brutal spectacle. From the misty, rain-swept shores of Britain to the hot desert sands of North Africa, from the dense forests of Gaul to the ancient, sophisticated cities of the Greek East. Wherever the Roman legions went, the amphitheater soon followed. The games served a crucial political and social purpose in the provinces. They were a powerful tool of Romanization, a way of exporting not just Roman power, but Roman culture and Roman values to the diverse and often resentful conquered peoples. In a newly conquered town in Gaul or Spain, the local elites, the wealthy landowners and merchants, would be eager to demonstrate their loyalty to their new masters and to climb the ladder of Roman society. One of the most effective ways to do this was to become an editor, to build a local amphitheater, and to sponsor lavish games for the populace. It was a public declaration of their wealth, their power, and their enthusiastic adoption of a Roman way of life. It was a way of saying, "We are Roman now." It was a form of cultural assimilation through blood sport. Let us journey away from Rome for a while, and see how the games were staged in the far-flung corners of the empire. Let us travel south, to the buried city of Pompeii. Here, the well-preserved amphitheater, one of the oldest in existence, predating the Colosseum by over a century, still stands. The graffiti on the walls of the city, preserved for eternity by the ash of Vesuvius, gives us a vivid, intimate picture of the local gladiator scene. We read of fan clubs for certain fighters, of rivalries between the gladiators from Pompeii and those from the neighboring town of Nicaria. We see the names of champions scrawled on tavern walls. Severus the freedman, 55 fights, or Marcus Attilius, 1 victory. One famous piece of graffiti, which was later confirmed by the historian Tacitus, describes a riot that broke out in the amphitheater in 59 AD during a set of games. Tensions between the local Pompeians and the visiting spectators from Nuceria boiled over. Taunts escalated to brawls, and soon the entire amphitheater was a scene of chaos, with men drawing hidden knives and fighting on the stone tiers. Many were killed and wounded. The incident was so serious that the matter was referred to the Senate in Rome, which banned games in the city of Pompeii for 10 years as punishment. This incident shows us that the passion, the intense local fandom, and the potential for real-world violence were just as intense in the provinces as they were in the capital. Let us now travel north, to the cold, damp frontier of Roman Britain. At the legionary fortress of Isca Augusta, modern-day Carlion in Wales, archaeologists have excavated a large, well-built stone amphitheater just outside the fortress walls. This was not for a large civilian population, but primarily for the soldiers of the Second Augustan Legion stationed there. Here, the games served a different purpose. They were a form of brutal military training, a way to keep the legionaries battle-hardened and accustomed to the sight of blood and death. They were also a grim form of entertainment for men, stationed for years at a time on a bleak, hostile frontier, far from the comforts and distractions of home. The gladiators here were likely not expensive imports from the great schools of Italy. They were local British captives, rebellious tribesmen, or condemned soldiers from within the legion itself, forced to fight for the amusement of their conquerors. Now let us go east, to the sophisticated, ancient cities of Greece and Asia Minor, like Ephesus or Corinth. Here, the gladiatorial games were a more controversial Roman import. The Greek world had its own long and proud tradition of athletic competitions, the Olympic, Pythian, and Isthmian games being the most famous. The Greeks valued athletics as a display of human beauty, skill, and non-fatal competition. The Roman taste for bloody fatal combat was seen by many Greek intellectuals and philosophers as barbaric, disgusting, and fundamentally uncivilized. They were horrified by the pleasure the Romans took in watching men kill each other, and yet, despite this cultural resistance, the games took hold. Amphitheaters were built, often funded by Roman emperors or wealthy Roman governors. The local populations, over time, developed the same taste for the bloody spectacle as their Roman counterparts. The lure of the spectacle, the thrill of the violence, was a powerful one, and it gradually overcame the philosophical objections of the elite. The style of the games could also vary from region to region, adapting to local tastes and resources. In the provinces of North Africa, the Venetians, the wild beast hunts, were particularly spectacular. The proximity to the African interior meant a ready supply of exotic and terrifying animals. The mosaics from this region are filled with vibrant, chaotic, and bloody scenes of hunters, or bestiary, fighting lions, leopards, wild boars, and elephants. The capture and transport of these thousands of animals was a massive industry in itself. The gladiators themselves were an international, multicultural collection of peoples. In a single set of games in Rome, you might see a German with his blonde hair and massive frame fighting a quick dark-skinned Syrian. You might see a Briton fighting a Numidian from North Africa. The arena was a microcosm of the empire itself, a place where the conquered peoples of the world were brought together and forced to perform a ritual of violence for the entertainment of their masters. It was a stark and constant reminder of the reach and the power of Rome. The existence of these hundreds of amphitheaters across the empire, from small wooden structures on the German frontier to massive stone edifices in the heart of great cities, tells us something profound about Roman civilization. They show us that the appetite for this form of entertainment was not just a quirk of the decadent urban mob in the city of Rome. It was a fundamental part of what it meant to be Roman. It was a shared cultural experience, a common language of violence, spectacle, and death that bound the vast, diverse empire together. It was the bloody glue of Roman identity. For over 600 years, from the early days of the Republic to the twilight of the Western Empire, the gladiatorial games were a central and defining feature of Roman life. The roar of the crowd, the clash of steel, the sight of blood on the sand, these were experiences that shaped the Roman psyche. But no institution, no matter how deeply entrenched, no matter how popular, lasts forever. The long, slow sunset of the gladiatorial tradition was not caused by a single event or a single decree. It was the result of a profound, gradual, and irreversible shift in the very soul of the Roman world. The decline was not, as we might like to imagine, due to a sudden wave of moral revulsion from a more enlightened populace. While some philosophers like Seneca expressed their disgust at the games, calling them a mere butchery, they were a minority voice, an intellectual elite, looking down on the crude tastes of the masses. For centuries, the vast majority of Romans saw the games as a celebration of their most cherished values: courage, discipline, and a contempt for death. The decline began for far more practical, economic, and geopolitical reasons. The primary driver of the decline was the changing nature of the empire itself. The great wars of conquest that had supplied a steady, seemingly endless stream of prisoners of war to the arenas had largely ended by the 2nd century AD. The empire, under emperors like Hadrian, entered a long period of consolidation and defense. Its borders became static. The legions were no longer bringing back tens of thousands of captives from newly conquered lands. This created a supply chain crisis for the land estate. Gladiators, once a cheap and plentiful commodity, became scarcer and therefore much more expensive to procure and to train. The cost of mounting lavish games began to spiral, becoming a crushing financial burden that fewer and fewer provincial elites, and eventually even the state itself, could afford. The empire also entered a long period of economic crisis and political instability in the 3rd century. Plagues, civil wars, and barbarian invasions strained the resources of the state. In an age of austerity and crisis, sponsoring hugely expensive games began to seem like a frivolous and irresponsible use of public funds. The money was needed for paying soldiers and shoring up the defenses of the frontiers, not for public entertainment. But the most significant, and ultimately fatal, factor in the end of the games was the rise of a new religion, a strange faith from the East that had once been brutally persecuted in the very arenas where the gladiators fought. This religion was Christianity. The core tenets of Christian belief were fundamentally and irreconcilably incompatible with the spectacle of the Munich era. The Christian emphasis on compassion, on forgiveness, on the sanctity of every human life as a creation in the image of God, and on the promise of an afterlife of peace, stood in stark and absolute opposition to the pagan Roman celebration of death, violence, and martial glory. Early Christian writers like Tertullian, writing at a time when Christians were still being executed in the arena, railed against the games with a fiery passion. He called the amphitheater the temple of Satan and the seat of plagues. He forbade Christians from attending the munera, arguing that to watch a man being killed, to take pleasure in it, was to be spiritually complicit in his murder. For the first few centuries of its existence, Christianity was a persecuted faith, and Christians themselves were often the victims of the arena. They were the noxi, the midday executions. They were thrown to the lions, burned as torches, or forced to fight as gladiators. Their martyrdoms, witnessed by their fellow believers, turned the arena from a place of public entertainment into a sacred site of sacrifice, a place sanctified by the blood of their saints. In 313 AD, the world changed forever. The emperor, Constantine, after a vision before a crucial battle, converted to Christianity. With the Edict of Milan, he granted religious tolerance throughout the empire. This was the beginning of the end for the gladiatorial tradition. While the games were not abolished overnight, they were too popular, too deeply ingrained in the culture, for that their imperial sanction and financial support began to rapidly wane. In 325 AD, Constantine officially banned the practice of condemning criminals ad ludum to the gladiator schools. This cut off another major source of fighters. Christian emperors who followed, like Theodosius, began to divert the massive state funds once used for gladiatorial games towards the building of great churches and the support of the ever-growing clergy. One by one, the pagan temples were closed, the old gods were abandoned, and the cultural foundations of the gladiatorial games crumbled. The last known gladiatorial games in the city of Rome took place in the early 5th century. According to the Christian historian Theodoret, a monk from Asia Minor named Telemachus traveled to Rome, determined to put a stop to the bloodshed. He entered the Colosseum during a fight. He ran onto the sand and placed himself between the two combatants, crying out for them to stop in the name of Christ. The crowd, enraged at this interruption of their entertainment, this violation of their sacred tradition, rose up in a furious mob and stoned the monk to death on the floor of the arena. But his martyrdom was not in vain. The story goes that the Christian emperor Honorius, so moved and shamed by the monk's sacrifice, issued a final, definitive ban on the games. Whether the story is true or not, it marks the symbolic end of an era. The great amphitheaters across the empire fell into disuse. The Colosseum, once the vibrant, roaring epicenter of state-sponsored violence, was abandoned. It was stripped of its marble seats and its bronze fittings. It was used as a fortress by medieval barons, as a quarry for the builders of Renaissance churches, and even as housing for the poor. Its broken arches became a symbol of the fall of a great empire. The world of the gladiator was over, and yet its legacy endures. The gladiator has haunted the Western imagination ever since, a potent symbol of a lost and fascinating world. In the Renaissance, he was a subject for artists seeking to recapture the classical form. In the 18th and 19th centuries, he was a hero for romantic painters and poets, a symbol of the noble savage or the tragic, defiant hero fighting against tyranny. And today, he is a titan of popular culture, a staple of sword and sandal epics, a globally recognized icon of strength and combat. But these popular images, with their focus on rebellious heroes and glorious freedom, often obscure the grim, uncomfortable reality. The truth of the gladiator is not a story of heroic freedom fighters. It is a story of slaves, of prisoners of war, of condemned men. It is a story of a brutal, dehumanizing system that turned human beings into property, into weapons, into disposable objects of entertainment for the masses. It is a story that reveals the darkest, most unsettling aspects of Roman civilization, its capacity for systematic cruelty, its love of spectacle, its profound and disturbing relationship with death. So as we leave this world of sand and blood, and return to the quiet and the safety of our own time, let us remember the real gladiator, not the muscle-bound hero of the cinema, but the Hordius, the barley man, the branded slave, the celebrity outcast who was forced to kill in order to live just one more day, and who was expected, above all else, to die well. Let the peace you are about to find be a silent tribute to the violence they could never escape, and to the silence that finally fell upon the great, empty arenas of the Roman world. The lamp flickers. The arena is empty. The great silence has fallen. Sleep well.